Okay, guys, now that we know what integers are, let's learn how to add them. When you're adding integers that have the same sign, either all positive numbers or we're adding all negative numbers. This is a simple concept. So again, we're going to first focus when our integers have the same sign. Simply add the absolute value of each integer and apply the sign of the integers given in the problem. So the absolute value of 3 is 3, plus the absolute value of 2 is 2. I add these together and I get 5, and they're both positive, so my answer remains positive. Now, I typically will not write a plus sign to represent positive. Now let's take a look at example number 2 using this simple rule. The absolute value of -3 is 3. The absolute value of -2 is 2. I add those together, but I apply the sign of the original integers, -5. Example number 3, I have 1 plus 1. That gives me 2, but the sign of both of these numbers is negative. Now let's take a look at using integer tiles to represent our problems. In example number 1, we have 3 positives, and we're adding 2 more positives, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positives all together. This is kind of like the idea of just adding apples with apples, oranges with oranges. Whatever you're adding together, that's what you get. So here we have 3 negatives, and we're going to add 2 more, so we have 5 negatives all together. Our third example, we have 1 negative, and we're going to add 1 more negative, so we have a total of 2 negatives. Now let's take a look at adding integers with different signs. So the concept of opposites or additive inverses is essential for adding integers with opposite signs. Recall that opposite numbers are equally distanced from 0 on the number line. You can see in our example, -5 and +5 are opposite numbers. They are additive inverses. They are equally distanced from 0. When we add opposites, we get 0 as an answer. So -5 plus 5 is 0. We can also say the additive inverse of -5 is 5. Therefore, -5 plus 5 is 0, or we can go the other way around. The additive inverse of +5 is -5. So therefore, 5 plus -5, we have opposite numbers. That gives us 0. They cancel each other out. Sometimes we call these zero pairs. There are 2 steps in adding integers with different or opposite signs. The first step is to subtract, yes, subtract the absolute values of the integers. The second step is determining the sign of the answer. So if we're adding a negative and positive, we have to see which sign we're going to apply. The integer with the larger absolute value is applied to the final answer. The integer with a larger absolute value, that sign is applied to the final answer. So if we just apply the rule right here, so we have 2 different signs, we are going to apply the absolute value and subtract. So we get 3. That's the first step, subtract the absolute values. Then the second step, 5 is larger than the 2, and 5 was originally negative, so our result is -3. Let's take a look at number 5. We have the absolute values, and it says to subtract the absolute values. We get 3. Then the second step, we look to see which absolute value is larger. 5 is still larger than 2, and this time it was positive, so our answer remains +3. Example 3, the absolute values are subtracted. We get 2. That's step number 1. 3, the absolute value of -3, which is 3. 3 is larger than 1. Therefore, our answer is going to be negative because the original integer before the absolute value was negative. So now let's take a look at integer tiles. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives, and we're adding 2 positives. And this is where the opposite pairs are going to come into place. So when we have a negative and a positive, they're going to cancel each other out. This is where the subtraction part comes in from the rule. Now what is left? We have 1, 2, 3 negatives. Example number 5, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positives, and we're adding 2 negatives. We have 1 and 2 zero pairs, and what is left is 1, 2, 3 positives. Example number 3, we have 3 negatives. So using integer tiles is a very good visual to see what's really going on. And then we're going to add 1 positive. The negative and positive cancel each other out, and what remains is 2 negatives. So -3 plus 1 is -2. Now you finish out these problems, showing your work, circling your zero pairs here, and then we'll get back to the next part of the lesson.